Well, good morning and welcome to Family Album. Family Album is a show about you, about Wakefield residents and the stories that they have to tell. My name is Gail Lowe and I am your host, and today we have with us Kerri Tarpey, member of a prominent family in Wakefield. Jim Tarpey owns the insurance company with his name, Tarpey, and today we're going to talk with Kerri about her family and about her pursuits, whether they're creative or travel or adventure, and we hope that you'll enjoy our conversation today. So Kerri, welcome to the show.
Thank you,
and thank you for being here. What would you like to tell us about the Tarpey family?
I don't know where to begin. I think it's difficult to separate the family from the business. They really are one and the same. So I would say there's 28 of us, 16 grandchildren, and there is a new baby on the way, a baby girl. We're all very excited. She'll be coming in the spring. So Jim Tarpey started working for Gould Olive 50 years ago. So he has been serving the Wakefield community for 50 years, and I think that's pretty special. His 5 children all work for the business. And they've done so for 30 years also, so they've also been serving the community. When you are in this business, you have to be very social. You have to really enjoy meeting people and interacting with people. If you talk to my husband, he remembers where everyone was born and what colleges they went to, and even their kids. And I'm always amazed by that because that's the opposite of me. But that's why I say they're really good at it, and I think it makes them special. Golf, for example. They all golf. It's been a huge time taker-upper. But it gives you an opportunity to get to know each other. When you spend 8 hours with somebody, you know if they have a temper, for example, because you'll be unwrapping the golf club from the branch with them. And if they're a cheater, or if they're impatient, or if they're rude, you find all that out. So you get an opportunity to know who you're doing business with and make a choice. But there's also a tremendous amount of volunteerism. So you volunteer for your own purposes, for your own joy, but it gives the community a chance to get to know you, know who you are. Because when something bad happens to you, we're probably one of the first calls you make. If not the first call, we're the second call. Because you need to know, where do I stand? What is going to happen to me and my family? So that's very important. So anyway, they're very good at it because they're very social and they seem to love it. Now, if you show me my insurance policy, I instantly fall asleep. I slip directly into a coma. It's like kryptonite to Superman. Just, no, I can't do it. But they, somehow or another, they keep all of the needs and the policies and the companies organized in their brains, and they're always upping their education, always renewing their education. I understand now the cybersecurity is a huge topic, and they're right on it. So anyway, so I think it's a very special business for that reason. They're all very proud. We have a legacy now. The 3 nephews have joined the business, and they're all thriving. It's exciting. You can see their pride in their grandfather and their families, their uncles, aunt, and they seem really driven to make an impact and to continue the legacy. They're very proud of it. So that's nice. I think it's really special. So the magic, though, is that there's 5 of them and they all get along. They work together, they play together, they golf, so they'll have a screaming match at the agency. Somebody will disagree about something, and it's wild and tumultuous, and then next thing you know, they're planning golf plans or who's going to the game or when, if they're going to play cards or whatever. So that's really special. And I think that's where we can credit Grammy and Gramps, which would be Jim and Pat Tarpey. So for our purposes, they're going to be Grammy and Gramps. I just can't help it. So I think that's where the magic comes from. It's the way that they were raised, the way Grammy and Gramps did things. So Jim was a Brighton boy. He grew up one of 9, and it wasn't an easy time. Having 9 kids is very, very expensive anyway. But everything was humble back then. You know, we didn't have a car for each kid, and there wasn't a college fund. You had paper routes and you worked hard. So Gramps had a paper route. He loves to tell the story that some of the Red Sox had settled in his paper route. And so one day Ted Williams came out and he was able to get him to sign a ball. And it was just this treasured item to him. I wonder, you know, when I think back to this kid, this eager kid trying to make his way in the world, how long he carried that ball in his paper bag every day, packing it in, hoping to see him and hoping to get a chance to sign it. I wonder how big of a deal Ted Williams was at that time, or if it was later that he became, I'll have to look into that. But anyway, so that ball eventually went the way of all treasured items. His brothers played with it and lost it on him. So that was a great loss to him. But anyway, that's Gramps. And so there was no big college fund, so he didn't go to 4 years of school, but he did hang out at a 4-year college. He went over to Regis College, and that's where he met my mother-in-law. So she was a little ahead of the game, because at that time, women didn't necessarily get 4-year degrees. That was uncommon. So they fell in love. Back then, he was a T-shirt wearing, you know, cigarettes rolled up in the T-shirt, toughie, and she was just smitten. So they met and fell in love, and then she went off to work for John F. Kennedy. So that was a really exciting time for her. And when the entourage was moving to D.C., she was invited to join. And she tells her claim to fame is that one day she was asked by Jackie Kennedy to borrow her nylons. She had to take her nylons off and give them to Jackie Kennedy, which is fun. But anyway, so they decided to go off to Washington, D.C., and she said, no, thank you. I'm going to stay back and I'm going to get married. And they did. They got married. And I've always asked her, do you have any regrets? And she, every single time I ask her, she, without hesitation, says no regrets. She meant to do this. She wanted the kids. She wanted the family life. I think about all those parties JFK threw in Washington and Marilyn Monroe singing happy birthday in a whisper to him. And would she have been there, and would it have been fun? But she has no regrets. I ask her again and again. She gets a little irritated with me, but she has no regrets. So then became the hardworking days of motherhood, you know, laundry, ironing, underwear, changing beds and cooking, and none of it's glamorous. There's all kinds of stories, like my husband was tied to a tree at one point so that she could get her chores done. And later on, I realized I probably should have taken a page from her book and lashed him to something to keep him around, but he was always busy. So they had paper routes as kids. There were years when Christmas presents were wrapped in newspaper, just humble beginnings. She would go to their beds and pray with them at night, which I just love that component to motherhood. And so the first big decision that affected the family, I think, was or brought us to where we are, was when Grammy decided no, she wasn't going to join Camelot. And then the second big decision was when Gramps, he was working for, I think it was Royal Insurance in Boston, and their company was moving to Connecticut, and he had to make a decision. Did he want to go with them, or did he want to start working for Tarpey Insurance? And that meant a pay cut. So Grammy was pregnant with her 5th child at this point, and like I said, it was a humble beginnings anyway. So they decided to stay back and work for Gould Olive, and that's the second big important thing that happened. So, you know, again, he worked 3 jobs. I think he was a waiter at one point, and she stayed home and took care of things. Their big night out would be a 6-pack, going to the neighbor's house to play cards. So it wasn't easy, and everybody worked hard, and I think that's what shaped them into who they are today and how they have such good family bonds. Their first big vacation was all 7 of them piling into the station wagon and driving to Florida. They went to Disney. And it may be an exaggeration, but I'm pretty sure they put like an underwear and a bathing suit and a pair of sandals into a shopping bag, and off they went, because there wasn't room for anything else in the car. And they drove through the night and the whole bit. So, But that's what you did. And I think that's what makes you strong. You know, it's not pampering your kids or giving them everything they want. It's really working for what you have.
Exactly. Kerri, I noticed that you're decorated here for Christmas. Do you have children, and are they coming home for Christmas?
Yes, they will come home and they will spend some time with us at Christmas. We have 4 wonderful, wonderful babies. They're not babies, 24, 23, 21, and 16. So Kevin and Stephanie have just left. They're accountants. They're brilliant accountants. One's living in Boston, Kevin, and Stephanie's living in Somerville. And then Adam is up at Ithaca. Now you've met Adam. And then Ryan, he's over here doing his thing at Wakefield High School. So we've got 2 accountants and 2 performers. Adam's going to be a teacher. But so Gramps is off doing his thing for Tarpey Insurance 50 years ago. And this is where I enter the story. So my father was a self-trained mechanic as a child in Lynn. And when he reached the right age, he started working for a gas station in Lynnfield. And this is where he met Warren Olive of Gould Olive Insurance. And they became friends. And my father would tell stories of, Mr. Olive generously donated his ski lodge. So he would go up to, I think it was Vermont, but maybe it was New Hampshire, and he would ski, and they would just act like they owned the place. And he was very grateful for it. But he would tell stories that he had enough money for the lift ticket, and he had enough money for the gas, but he didn't have enough money for the food. So on the way home, they would always try and find friends, and they would go and visit their friends so that they could be offered a meal. But again, this is the stuff that our kids will never understand. They will never know how you had to sacrifice to make an opportunity. So anyway, Mr. Olive they were good friends, and my father had his insurance written through them. And then I got my car, and I paid cash for a brand new fire engine red Camaro, and I loved it, and I drove it way too fast. I don't know if the acceleration was the thrill or the deceleration, but I know the tight turns. It was an addiction. So I crashed it.
Oh.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I crashed the car.
Oh.
And so, of course, Tarpey Insurance had to handle, Gould Olive, which became Tarpey Insurance, had to handle the claim. So I wrote a letter afterwards. They had done a good job, so I wrote a letter, and I gave it to Mark's father. I sent it to Mark's father, but it was about Mark and how he had handled the claim. So he wanted to know who this girl was who wrote so well and drove too fast, and that seemed like somebody he wanted to eventually marry. But anyway, so his good friend married my cousin, and I was telling my cousin about the accident and about the claim, and she said, "Oh my gosh, that's the guy I want to fix you up with." I said, "No fix up, no fix up." But we met at the wedding, and that's the rest of the story. So then come all my beautiful babies and are settling here in Wakefield. And then what I just found out the other day, I didn't know this, is so Mr. Warren Olive brought us together literally through our fathers, and this destiny, it was like it was intended, it was inescapable destiny. Mr. Olive lived in this neighborhood where I live now, and my in-laws live. And I just find that to be such a strange coincidence or ending to his chapter of our lives.
It's amazing how these coincidences seem to happen.
It really is.
I think I like to think of them as divine encounters or divine something, but I don't know.
I don't know either. And I'm not even going to look for an explanation. I choose to believe that maybe it was meant to be.
Meant to be.
You know, but
Absolutely. So I'm noticing here behind me that you have some artwork.
yes.
And it's very colorful and vibrant. And I'm not surprised because that's how I see you. It's colorful and vibrant. And they're beautiful pieces of art. What can you tell us about them?
Well, these 2 pieces were made literally because I needed covers for my book. Publishing a book costs thousands of dollars. Getting the book published is almost impossible. You need an agent, and the agents will not talk to you unless you have prior publications. So there's a catch-22 that's very difficult to get around. But these days you can self-publish, and it's a great, great thing because some really wonderful writers have had an opportunity to be discovered because of self-publishing. But anyway, I wasn't going to spend a tremendous amount of money getting my books published, so I decided to just paint them. So I went out online and looked for inspiration, and this is what I came up with. So this is the front cover, and that's the back cover of the book.
Well, I noticed that your book is right here, and you write under Kerri Tarpey.
That's my maiden name is Shoot.
Yes.
And I wanted to, I have 2 sisters, and so the name died with my father. So I decided to use my maiden name in the...
It's a beautiful name, Kerri, and I understand that the topic that you address in the book, it's a novel, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And it's about the immigration experience from Mexico. So what can you tell us about that?
So there's 2 reasons that I wrote the book. One is I've always felt that I would write. I always knew that I would write. There's something about stringing words together and creating emotion or explaining things in a way that people understand that they previously couldn't understand. So there's something about writing that is my alter ego. It's the bigger part of me. I really, really enjoy writing. So this story was rumbling around inside of me, but I didn't have the confidence to engage. I'm a kiteboarder, so I was given an opportunity to travel. I went to Dominican Republic with a group of people. I didn't know most of them. I knew that we would kiteboard out in front of the hotel, so I took a chance and I went and I made 40 new friends, and I love them all, each one of them. One of the fellas that I met, his name was Mark Valou, he is a fellow creative. He did film and other things, and one of our conversations was about what our project would be if we could. And I told him my story, and he said, "You have to write that, Kerri. I've never heard that story written that way. So you have to tell your story." And I said, "I don't know how." And he said, "Just do it. And I said, "Will you help me?" And he said, "Of course I will." Well, that was a lie, because he came home and he fell in love, and I haven't talked to him since. But I did dedicate the book to him because he deserved it. He got me going. But the reason that I wrote the book is because I didn't like the way people were treating each other. I didn't like the way Americans were treating illegal immigrants, but maybe even immigrants. And, here we have the opportunity to be educated and to work and to succeed in life, but not every country has that. And so the people that come here, I have empathy for them, because you might not be offered an education or safety. And that's the part that I wanted to take the time to see if I could make people understand the journey of the people who have come here. Now, I don't think that everybody who's unhappy in their country should come here. I think that will ruin the U.S. But that doesn't mean that we have to disrespect those who are desperately seeking a safe haven to live. And so I did some research. After he encouraged me to write, I did some research. And what I found was truly, truly horrific. I didn't even put it all in the book. So, for example, there's a town in Africa they call Kidney Town, because people go to this town and they offer poor people money in exchange for a kidney. And of course, the person doesn't know how painful the recovery is or how it's going to impact their future. They're just so glad to be able to feed their families and have some money. Well, the money never comes. If it comes, just a pittance of it comes. But I also learned that in Mexico, the drug cartels behead people far more than ISIS does. And there's actually more drug cartel people than there are military in Mexico. So the more I dug, the more I realized that the story needed to be told. I mentioned before that I listened to a recording of a gentleman crossing the desert, holding his dying brother in his arms, begging for help. He had cell coverage and he was able to reach 911. He said, "Please come and find me." And the operator said, "Oh, we're on our way. We're looking for you." And he said, "You don't understand. My brother's dying." And she assured him he would come, and they never came. So his brother died, and he went on, and he made it. He made it to the U.S., and he tells the story now. But he cries, and it's heartbreaking. And so if you look at the people that make it here that way, I think even if you have to send them home, you do it with compassion and respect. And so that's basically what the story is about. It's all fiction, but it's kind of based on history. because it's research based. But anyway, it was a great, great joy to write it. And at first people were reading it and they would text me and they would say, "You're not going to do that." And they acted like these characters were real. And in my mind, they are real. I've read that you have to know your character's favorite color. But really, I don't know that. And I wasn't sure until I reread it the other day how well I knew my characters. I thought maybe I wrote them well enough to be in the book, but I really did. They are an extension of me. Some of the things they do are things that I would do, and some of the things that they say really came right out of me. It's like they live inside me. So anyway, it was a great, great experience. There it sits. It doesn't get a lot of attention mixed up on Amazon with all of the other books, but those who have read it have spoken very highly of it, and it was a thrill. And now, after all this conversation with you, I actually have my next plot sequence forming. My son Adam, who you've met and love, he encouraged me to create my own world and do a sequel. So I think that's what I'll do. It'll take a long time. This was 1 year from the time that book pushed itself out of me, and then I edited it, and then I learned about self-publishing. It was 1 year. I think this one will be a little bit longer, but I can feel it coming, and it comes to life inside you, and it kind of takes over a little bit. So,
and once you get going on fiction writing, the ideas will just come in droves.
Yep.
And you won't have the time to do it.
Nope.
But you'll have to make the time because you have a lot to say.
Right.
And a lot of good.
As an author yourself,
Yes.
You know the process.
I do.
Yep.
Yes. And I'm thinking that this book would make a wonderful holiday gift. How can people find it?
Well, it is priced affordably. I put it on Amazon. I think it's a good story, and it makes you feel and it makes you understand. And you can also purchase it on Kindle. Mm-hmm. And I have a website, kerriwrites.com. It tells a little bit more about me and my adventures and my life's motto, which is, everything is possible. Every problem has a solution. You just have to find it. And I try to encourage people to follow their dreams. I got my associate's degree slowly. I was what you'd call a late bloomer. And then I got my bachelor's degree as an adult, probably around 40, and then they called me an adult learner. I don't like either of those names, but I definitely liked following my dream and making it come true. And so now I use the website as a way to say, it doesn't really matter what the beginning of your story is. You can write the end of your story. You can create your own life and turn it in a direction that you want it to go. And mine's going to be writing for a while, and we'll see what other adventures life takes me on.
Wonderful. Now, you mentioned a little while ago about kiteboarding. Mm-hmm. And I understand that you've had a few travel adventures.
I have.
Well, can you tell us about something that is really exotic and foreign?
Yes, I've had a few foreign exotic occurrences. So I went to Brazil for a few weeks. I was up in Fortaleza, Era do Guajaru, I think you would say it. And I kiteboarded there, and what an experience it was. I got off the plane and things looked similar, airports and so forth, but once you hit the streets are so different. There's sand on the streets and there's weeds growing out of it and people just strolling casually. There's a lot of traffic and so forth, but then you get out into the rural areas, and we bumped along on a sandy road with holes in it, and we arrived through the back way because the front way was under construction, and at that point I thought we were being abducted, and I didn't think I would ever see home again, but sure enough, we arrived at the most quaint and beautiful villa, and right out in front was the ocean, and we kiteboarded. But I would go to the beach and I would pump up my kite, and all of a sudden I look behind me and there's bulls with horns, and the females have horns there too, and they're just strolling down the beach, and I'm thinking, I hope my kite doesn't spook them, and they just walk on by. They're grazing. It's all government. The beach is all government owned, so they're just grazing. They're heading for the spit of land out in front. When the tide gets low, they cross it, they go over and they eat, and then they come back. And then the next day, you think, wow, I wonder if the bulls will come again. It's donkeys, a family of donkeys, hawing and banging and coming down the way, and they just stroll past you as though we're just ornaments or like we're the zoo members and they're the free ones. It was beautiful. And then a little family would come to the beach, and and Mom would sit down and the dog would be on her lap and the kids would be coming, and there were no coolers and no blow up toys and no shovels, no towels, no nothing. They would just be happy to be together and enjoy the ocean, and they would jump in. Some of the kids had no bathing suits, and it was so beautiful. And I came home and I saw my home differently. It seemed artificial and constructed, and I didn't like it as much. It took me a long time to get used to pulling up to that manicured lawn and those bushes all cut in perfect rows, and I wanted that free. I wanted to be back in Brazil with the wind and the wild, and that was awesome. So I've had every trip that I've gone on, I've had a little bit of wildlife. I was in Aruba kiteboarding, and someone had made this beautiful hut out of driftwood. And so I lay down to take a break, and there were these geckos, and they had been scurrying all around. But when you lay down still, they climb up on top of you, and they just sit there. And if you don't move, they don't move. I could move a little bit, but not much. And so they crawled on my face, and one of them bit my nostril, and the other one was touching my eye with his tongue. I could feel it. And it was such a thrill. It was the most ridiculous thing, but I'll never forget it. When I was in the Dominican Republic, we went to a monkey sanctuary, and they give you a plate of peanuts and bananas, and you're not allowed to touch the monkeys, but they climb on you, and they come out and they steal from your plate, and they jump on your head, and then they jump away, or they sit there and they just eat it. You can feel the shells dropping. It was the most unbelievable feeling to have those little rubber feet running along on me. But the most recent adventure was Thailand. I went to Thailand and Cambodia, and this was not for kiteboarding, this was for volunteerism. It was a company called Bamboo, and what an exciting experience it was. I discovered them online, and I was terror-struck, but I needed this adventure. It felt like the right thing to do. And so by myself in this room, sitting with the computer on my lap, I decided to go, and I'll never forget hitting that button. I held my finger over it. My heart was racing. I was scared. It was like panic almost, but I've become a little bit addicted to that feeling because you're not just alive, you're living. You know, those moments when you're really that excited and you feel that alive. It's such a thrill. So anyway, I hit the button, my palms were sweating, my heart was racing. I wasn't sure what I did, if it was right or wrong, and it turned out to be the most amazing thing. We went to Bangkok, and it's very much like Hangover 2, the craziest sights you see, but everybody would be out in the main street with their drinks and they're dancing, and you walk down and you're tapping people's glasses and stopping to have a chat, and there's people from all over the world, and you'd hug and you're like family, and it was beautiful, and it was chaotic, but it was really, really fun. And then we went to be with the elephants, and that was amazing. A community, so in Thailand you have God, country, family. I think the elephant even goes before the family. They're just that important in the society. So there were 13 elephants in this community, and they would come together into the yard, and they would eat bamboo, and they'd be loose. They have their mahout, the fellow that controls them, and they would eat bamboo, and we would walk them to the river. And then when we got to the river, we would bathe them. We would get in the water with the elephant, and he would fill his trunk and throw the water and roll around. Some of them would roll around. It was so exciting and so much fun. And then when that adventure was over, I cried. I cry at the end of every trip. And then I moved on to Cambodia, where we worked at a school. And that was touching. The kids had great big feet in little tiny sandals, or little tiny feet in great big sandals. And everything was mismatched, and they were happy. They were so happy. So in Cambodia, you have to pay to go to school, and most people couldn't afford it. So the school I was working with was teaching them English. But imagine trying to teach a person who speaks Cambodian English when they've never learned to write their own language or read. So all they know are the words, and so now you have to teach them English. So they would recite, "Hello, teacher, how are you? I am fine." And so as the week went on, I would speak to the kids, and I would say something to them, and they would run away, and they were scared, and then they would come back and they'd say, "Hello." So I'd say, "How are you?" And they'd run away, and they'd come back and they'd say, "I am fine, how are you?" It was the cutest thing. So I painted their new library, and I laid tile, and they were so eager to interact, so we would play games with the brooms. And I thought how magical it could be that I could fall in love with this child that I don't even know his name, but those sparkling eyes and that willingness to love and live. And I cried my eyes out when I left. It was like abandoning my own kids. But anyway, so 95 degrees, I went off to help a family. My money from so we did all kinds of tourism that paid for our transportation, everything. But we went off to help a family build a toilet. They've never had indoor plumbing. And so I got into a big cement circle in 95-degree heat with a short shovel and shoveled all of the dirt out. And as the dirt comes out, the cylinder falls in. And that's how you build a septic tank. And then they hit it with a hammer and they make a hole and they create, and we put down we laid the floor, we mixed the cement, dusty, heavy cement. But now I know how to do it, which is great. And then we put the bricks, we laid the brick and when we were done, they had this wonderful toilet. They had never had indoor plumbing. And that particular home had been through at least 3 generations of family and nobody had a toilet. It was unbelievable. I'm so grateful for the experience. I really want to follow them now to Costa Rica and work with the turtles. There's so much pollution affecting the turtles, their populations, and just causing them to suffer. So they're doing great things there. So that's something that I want to do soon as well. We'll see what life hands me, but I'm hoping to create that opportunity as well.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, you're not used to being in front of the camera, now are you?
No,
You're
no.
used to being in back of the camera.
Behind the typewriter.
Why don't we end our show by telling everybody what you do in another studio?
Oh, so I work for Cheryl Webb Scott, and I help her film the show that she does, Total Woman. And I'll tell you, it has been such a wonderful experience watching her work. She's brilliant. She's so lively and bright, and she makes it just as fun and relaxed and easy to talk. The guests have such a good time as you do, so I commend you both. But it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And now I'm trying to do animation for her. I'm using a free program, so it's very, very difficult, but I'm going to animate her. I see her as a cartoon. She's just so full of life.
Well, there's no telling what we'll hear about you next.
Let's hope.
We will. We'll hope together.
Somebody asked me once, is there anything that you can't do? And I said, I don't know. I'll let you know if I find something.
Well, with that, we have another episode concluding now with Kerri Tarpey and her wonderful book. And don't forget to put it on your holiday list if you have a reader in the family or a friend or someone. And if you'd like to be a guest on Family Album, you can contact me by emailing me at the address that will scroll at the end of the show. And thank you, Kerri, for being our special guest during this wonderful holiday season.
Thank you for being interested.
From WCAT, we wish you and your family a very, very happy holiday.
Thank you.
And a wonderful new year to come.
You as well.
Thank you.